weeks ago, the claim was made that media's depiction of women causes a woman to have a smaller salary than her male counterpart. The issue of the salary gap between genders is not because of media's influence. There are more plausible and reasonable explanations for this. Women have had issues of being lesser to their male counterparts long before media's influence. My opponent's secondary claims were that 1, stereotypes created from media label women as purely emotional and sensitive, and 2, that women are portrayed as dependent on men. My response to her first claim, that stereotypes created from media label women as purely emotional and sensitive, the media may portray women as mostly emotional and sensitive, but this does not cause the lower salary of women in comparison to men. Media's ideas of women came from society's ideas of women. The media just exaggerated it. For instance, the media did not create the image of women being emotional and sensitive. It was already an existing stereotype that they amplified for a comedic effect. This claim has a false cause, which is a violation of the test of effect-cause reasoning. In this case, the cause is not sufficient because there is no proof that the stereotypes media creates for women will affect how much they earn in their jobs, and no other causes have been accounted for. The evidence does not really support the main claim. It's an irrelevant argument. It does not prove that the portrayal of women as emotional and sensitive does not prove that this is the cause of lower salary rates. From an article by Laura Fitzpatrick from Time magazine, there are 3 more plausible explanations for the gender gap in salaries. She mentioned, the first one that she mentions is that women tend to go for lesser paying jobs, like in the social sciences or nursing and social work. 2, that women often take time off or go on leave to start a family, while most men consistently work. There was a statistic from an article that says a full 52% of women in prime earning age range of 26 to 59 go through at least one full calendar year earning nothing at all, compared to just 16% of men. She also mentions that there's a sort of discrimination here, whether it's conscious or not, because of number discrepancies. My response to her second claim, that women are portrayed as dependent upon men, is that although a lot of TV shows and other forms of media may portray women as dependent on men, it does not necessarily cause the issue of the salary gap between genders. This is an irrelevant argument also because the idea that women play dependent roles in the media does not necessarily mean that they will be paid less. Other forces at work are responsible for the gap in wages. Many sources cite the same issues as Laura Fitzpatrick in reasoning why women have lesser pay than men. In an article by Barbara Beck, Special Reports editor of The Economist, it is also explained that motherhood is a big cause of the gender salary gap. Women often take time off of work for motherhood, while men tend to stay in work and be the breadwinners. Robert Longley quotes the General Accountability Office, saying that women in the workforce are also likely to work a full-time schedule, are less likely to work a full-time schedule, and are more likely to leave the labor force for longer periods of time than men, further suppressing women's wages. A lot of inferences were made here by my opponent without any sound reasoning to get to the claim. For instance, the warrant for the second claim is that if employers believe that women are dependent on men, they're more reluctant to give them a higher-ranking job and pay more because the woman is only good if the man is around. The warrant here does not connect the grounds to the claim. The reasoning here is false because it makes too much of an inferential leap. None of the evidence supports or proves the main claim. To prove this, you would need to first find out if the people in charge of salary and hiring first watch the TV shows or are exposed to these depictions of women. This alone has affected their view and not some other cause. And then they relate these new feelings towards women in the hiring and discussing of salary rates of women. And there would need to be like a statistical correlation between these factors. So based on this evidence and reasoning, I hope you can understand the fallacy in this claim that media's depiction of women causes them to have a smaller salary than their male counterparts.
Well, there are two general ways that you're going about responding to this argument, and I think both of them work pretty effectively. The first is to basically challenge the relevance of the claim. The argument is about women's salaries, and it's dependent upon the way they've been depicted in society. And you've got an argument that says that this would not be sufficient, and an argument that also says that there's no demonstration that people are influenced by these kinds of things, so that we're making this vast link that's going on here. And then your second argument suggests that there are countercausalities for why women's wages are different than men, and you defend those arguments in two different places with some pretty reasonable evidence to support those positions. I think you could probably strengthen both of the positions that you're taking on this with maybe some data, historical data, for example, about the trends of women's wages in comparison to men. You know, I don't know what the gap number was. Was it 81% or something like that? It's not. Yeah. Whereas 15 years ago it was 70%, and 25 years ago it was 40% or something like that. And it seems awfully strange that over the time that women have become more and more part of the workforce, that they increase as a percentage of their wages in comparison to men, despite the fact that the media has become more ubiquitous, which is what the advocate has been saying here and portraying this and causing these particular problems. I did like the argument that you made that said, look, these depictions by the media are just reflections of stereotypes that already pre-existed, and laying the blame on the media is a little bit problematic. And then I thought that you did, like I said, a good job trying to suggest alternative causalities on those points. I like the relevance issue also. It seems right at the end that you've got a good argument that says, look, there's a step that's missing in this, and that is proof that the people who do the hiring, pay the wages, have in fact even been exposed to this media, that they pay attention to any of those kinds of things. We don't have any data that surveys their attitudes toward women, that surveys their consumption of media. We don't even have a statistical correlation between, the frequency of women being depicted as being dependent and attitudes. So, in essence, there's just a huge link in the argument, in this chain of arguments that's been underdeveloped. And I thought that was a good thing to point out. All right, thank you.